Don't know it, but you're fine, so fine, fine, so fine. Ooh, wow. Oh, girl, I'm gonna show you when you're mine, oh, mine, mine, oh, mine. Treasure, that is what you are.
All right, all right, all right, all right. We are back. We are back and intact. Man, what's going on? I see my man here, Dr. Jason McGhee. Good to see you, family, as usual.
What
How are
up,
you?
though? Man, I'm feeling good. I'm feeling good. It's a Friday, Friday. When I was in the school, that's what we called it. So I'm excited to be here, man. Yes,
Man,
sir.
man, I'm excited as well because this is one of those things where I've been waiting just to kind of get you on the schedule, get you on the calendar. And by the way, let me correct that. I just can't call you Jay. Let me call you Dr. McGhee. Put some spec on my name.
Yeah, no doubt, man. No doubt. I appreciate it. You work with kids, man. You want them to know. Like, hey, listen, this is what I did. All right. So, address me as such. So absolutely, man. Appreciate you.
Man, appreciate you more. So many people know that you are a principal, former principal, and so forth. But before we get to the educational portion of
Mhm.
our topic today, where'd you grow up?
Man, I am from Detroit, Michigan. Um, right on 6 Mile and Schaefer. I went to Mumford High School. So anybody from Detroit, anybody from Michigan knows Mumford High School. And I went to Mumford High School, man, cut my teeth there. Went to Michigan State University after that. And
Okay.
now I live here in Grand Rapids, Michigan, which is about 2 hours away.
Gotcha. So you are Detroit.
Oh man, all day, all day.
So so then let me ask you, you went to Michigan State, and um y- you and I pledged a fraternity, and people are like, what fraternity did they pledge? Well, the oldest and the coldest,
The oldest in the coldest.
oldest and the coldest, 1906, baby, the original.
The originals. Come on, man. Respect your roots.
What inspired you to pledge a fraternity?
Man, so I got to college and I thought I was something. You couldn't tell me much because I did well in high school. I was number 6 in my class. I got to college and got punched in the face. And I remember being in chemistry 141. And I was like, yo, what's happening? I wanted to call my mom and quit. Um, but some guys took me under their wings in the engineering department. And they
Okay.
were like, this is how you learn. This is how you study. This is how you do school. And I was like, okay. And no knowledge of their affiliation at the time. Because there wasn't an affiliation.
Yeah.
And as the semester went on, we went to a yard show. And I went to the yard show. And when they did the unveiling, they took the mask off. These were the same guys that was teaching me how to learn and teaching me how to study to make
Oh,
it through college who were
oh,
cross alpha. And I was like, yo, these are my guys. I said, well, I gotta stay with them.
yeah.
So that led me to the fraternity, man. And it's
Okay.
all been great since then.
You just said something that really piqued my ears. They taught
Mhm.
me how to study.
Come on. Come on. Come on, man.
I don't want to pass over that because I think sometimes, even though we may be adults or we may be in different fields, like we think we have mastered learning in a way that is allowing us to have breakthroughs and or breakdowns. Can you
Mhm.
just simply talk about learning and the learning process that you have adapted? And I'm assuming as a former principal, you've had to also teach that to teachers and other professionals.
Absolutely, man. So when you're talking about learning, like I said, you couldn't tell me much. I thought I was smart, and I was smart. Um, but when it came down to it, I think I figured out the game in high school. Like I figured out the game. I started playing the game. So it was easy for me. When the game changed, when the environment changed, I didn't know the rules. I didn't know the expectations and duties and responsibilities. I was coming with the same mindset I did in high school. So when I was learning how to learn, I had to think about, all right, how do I retain information? How do, like, metacognition, how do I think about thinking? And this is what was being passed down to me. It's like, hey, you need to have a strategy on how to handle all these classes, all your free time, because now it's all together. It's not just my parents having my schedule for me. I get on the bus, I go to school, I go hours 1 through 7, and I go home. Nah, bro. Everything else was in this big pot. So how do I learn? How do I think about thinking? What is my schedule like? So once I learned how to build a strategy, once I learned that I'm a strong visual learner and a kinesthetic learner, I was able to retain information at a rate that I wasn't in high school. So that's how the foundation was built for me. And as a principal, and I don't want to say former principal, I kind of am. I'm on sabbatical right now. So I'm
Yeah.
testing the water to see what I'm supposed to do. But as a principal, as a leader in an educational institution, I have to find ways to do that for all the people who are not like me, who are not wired like me. They don't process like me. But I have to figure out how they process and how to help them retain information. So you start with some strategy. You have to go deeper with some processing. Sometimes they have to take some kind of assessment to see what type of learner they are. You know,
Yeah.
my son's he's a photographic memory. And I'm like, how do you do that?
Yeah.
Right. So all his work when I'm working with him has to be, I use a lot of visual aids to help him remember. Right. My son is a very emotional type learner. So stories work with my younger son. So stories work with him. So I try to use those strategies to help those who are not like me, or who are those who are under my leadership, learn at their best rate. Even adult learners, they learn differently than young learners. Right. So it's a whole process of strategy, formulas, assessments, all that coming together.
What did you study in college?
So I started off studying engineering,
Okay.
and then I transitioned over to graphic design. I
Okay.
did art education, and I did I did art education and graphic design. Got a double major. My master's was in leadership, and then my doctorate degree was in K-12 leadership.
Okay. 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 So you have your doctorate now, and you are a principal. No. What inspired you to move in that direction in the educational field? That's a tough field, by far. But not only do you have to be passionate, but you really have to be gifted to
Mm-hmm.
make influence and an impact. Can you talk about that a little bit?
Yeah, man. I started, I knew that, well, I knew as a kid I would never go into teaching because I'm from Detroit, man. And sometimes we gave our teachers a hard time. And I was like, yeah, it's
Yeah,
not,
that part.
I'm
That
I'm
part.
straight. Until I got to a point where I started learning more about again, my learning and what I was going through at school. Then I realized, hey, we need some help in our communities and somebody has to do it. I said, so I just raised my hand and said, I'm going to go down this educational field, but what's the best route? So I went through art education because that was my thing. And as I was an art teacher, I got to a point where I was like, okay, there's a lot of things happening in the policy level. There's a lot of things happening and decisions are being made. How are we leading these schools? And I was like, I need to figure out how to get there. So I started down this process of leadership. How can I be at the forefront, at the table in these schools? And so that's how I got to the principalship. Now I'm leading the school. Now, as a leader in schools, I'm at tables where people are making some decisions at a higher level, at the
Yes.
district level. We're talking about curriculum. We're talking about programs that's coming to the district. How do we have influence? How can I have a say? I'm in the trenches. So how do I have it? I want to say, because I'm
Yeah.
doing the work and I want to share with you. So that brought me to where I am now. And for me to take a sabbatical, come on, man, it was the hardest decision of my life because I love what I do as a principal.
Right. Right.
But to really dig down into the policy work, you have to be able to understand policy and talk with the policymakers. If I'm in the trenches every single day, I'm rarely having conversations with these guys. I'm rarely looking at the research because I'm in the trenches. So I took a step back to get into the trenches to go up that next level and say, how can we really help our Black and brown babies specifically get through school, hurdle these inequities, so that they can be okay to take care of us when we get to that age when we need them.
Yeah, I think many people don't think about you're just not teaching, you're just not facilitating. You
Facts.
literally have to start dealing with policies and legislation because now we're talking about all of the things that help the schools operate at a highest level. I want to back up a little bit. Like, did you have a teacher or a mentor in the educational space that helped influence you towards that direction?
And yeah, they were there the entire along the entire journey. I just didn't recognize them as people trying to get me to go
Uh,
into education, right?
uh,
In fourth grade, I remember Miss Shave, she was instrumental. Mr. Johnson, he was a counselor when I was in elementary school. I got to high school, Miss Owens, and I had a bunch of teachers that really were like teaching.
wow.
But when I was in college, I was taking an art class, and one of the professors was like, he said, "You have a knack for teaching. You have a knack for people, and you should really consider getting into an education program." And I was like, "I'm good, bro. I'm good." But Bill Charlin, Dr. Charlin was one of the guys who kind of edged me in that direction as well. So along the path, man, there were people always rooting and throwing those little signs. I just had to stop and pay attention, and I'm glad I did.
That's good. Let me ask you something from an educational standpoint and as a
Mhm.
principal. Like, how important is, and I know this is a tough topic. How important is faith in the educational space?
Come on, man. Listen, I don't know how you do it without it, right? Because there's so many factors in play when it comes to being in the school, not just leading the school. Now, that leading the school is a whole different animal as opposed to being that teacher in the classroom with the scholars. And even then, you need it. I don't care if you're the custodian, you need it. I don't care if you're the nutritional specialist or the lunch lady, you need it because you're dealing with human beings, being human.
Yeah,
And so when you arrive, you're gonna encounter some things that's not in the curriculum. You're gonna encounter things that's not in the playbook for what you're supposed to do, and the duties and responsibilities is not there, right? When you're talking about hopelessness, and the kid comes in, and this is their only time that they're going to have a structured environment, they're going to have a meal. This is their only time that they're going to have it, and they're showing up, and you're there with them, and they recognize you as the leader. And sometimes you don't know what to do because your training is not going to give you the information, right? All your schooling is not going to give you the information. It has to come from a higher source. So, man, every day I walked into the building, I would sit in my parking lot before I walked in, and I'd throw up some prayers to just to get me through, help me make the right decisions because there's so much. And I just don't know how you do it without it. So I can't speak to it if you don't have it. But when I tell you faith plays an instrumental role, a monumental role in order for you to do this work, because I'm telling you, you're dealing with people. You're not necessarily dealing with a little product that at the end of the day, you're going to come out with this thing that you nurtured and cultivated. Nah, man, it's you're cultivating some the minds. You're cultivating things that are unseen, and you have to be willing to guide those people through this process and not knowing, what's next. And that's what faith is really about: is having that belief when there's nothing there that says it's going to happen. So it plays a huge role, man.
do you have to teach that to the teachers as well?
I think you do, yeah, as a leader. Yep. Now, yes, can you get into some trouble with, trying to blend that faith line? But
Yeah,
sometimes you have to be careful because somebody might tell on you.
right.
Oh, Dr. McGhee is talking spiritual and he's talking about God. He's bring out the Bible, right? So you have sometimes you have to find ways to communicate that without necessarily saying, hey, I'm a Christian and or
Yeah.
whatever your faith is. You have to find ways because it's school and it can be very tricky.
So you
But
got to
there's
be
there's definitely ways to do it. And a lot of times you show it through your actions, it ties back. And then there's communities in the school, right? So if there is a faith-based community, which are allowed, there are groups and clubs that have Bible study, that's
okay.
appropriate,
Okay.
right? You can definitely lean into that community and really express yourself there. But as a leader, I think you have to find a way to keep that hope and optimism alive in the work that we do.
I don't think we've had Bible study in school when I was growing up. Is that new?
I know it's like it's a club,
Okay.
and so if you do it and do it through the lens of a club, because it's student led and this is what they want. So it's not like it's something that the school's definitely, leading and providing. Here's the resources and here's the information, but you can't have a student club that represents those types of that belief in that faith.
Okay. So let me ask you, how important um how important is it and how important do community groups help with the schools? Because I know, I'm a part of Rotary, so I know we do a lot of things that engage with the local communities, but there's so many groups that I
Mhm.
think could and probably should have a oneness towards supporting the teachers, supporting the students, towards the influence and impact that we're looking to have so that we can start having better results in the schools, because we're having issues out here in the Bay Area.
Oh man, I bet you we're having similar issues as well. So absolutely, I have a motto. This is just my motto, and it's from my teaching at Michigan State, I'm sure. But there's a connection between schools, families, and communities,
Mm.
and I use that to align my vision, align my mission, align our values. But it's hard to run a school when you don't have a community influence. So I don't care what level, elementary, middle, or high school, there has to be a connection to your surrounding community. So if you are a principal leader, one of your jobs is to solicit some of that support from the surrounding community and beyond. So absolutely, when I was an elementary principal, we absolutely had the Rotary come in twice a month, and we celebrated the student of the month, and they helped with that. They invited me out to a lot of the meetings. There was some interaction there where we
Yeah.
worked together to do this work. And outside of the road, we had local banks. I went to the corner store. Hey, listen, I know some of my students are coming through here. All right,
Yeah.
let me know what's going on. All right, he would keep me in the
Oh,
loop as to what's happening in the
yeah.
hood. But at the
Yeah.
same time, he would offer snacks sometimes for certain meetings from his store.
Wow.
So we had a relationship. So I'm talking the bank, the hospital, the gas station. It didn't matter. Community, the surrounding community has to be part of it, and the school has to be the hub.
Yeah.
So it's super important to do that. And as a leader, that should be one of the things that you do to make sure your school is a community.
Man, this is really good and interesting because I don't think we have enough dialogue with leadership
Mhm.
like yourself, um, because
Yeah,
you have on hands deck experience, like on what the teachers need,
absolutely.
what the students need. You kind of see it from a 32,000 feet high profile in terms
Mhm.
of, being able to help people and really allow them to be a better version of themselves. And speaking
Mhm.
of better versions, you use a assessment in a lot of the things that you do, using the flight assessment and so forth. Can you talk about that a little bit? So,
Mhm.
because people are always asking, "Hey, I keep hearing about this flight assessment thing. Can you talk about that a little bit?"
Oh man, see, the flight assessment is a game changer, and I'm learning that it doesn't matter what community you're in, but in education especially. We talked about how do you learn, right? The other side of that is how do you behave? What's your preference for your behavior? How do you make decisions? How do you deal with changing environments? How are you with systems and procedures? So the flight assessment is definitely something that, I use with my staff, I use with my scholars, I use with my parents. There's so many ways to start thinking about how we are showing up as human beings, as individuals in our different environments. So for me, I took it head on. The flight assessment through Dr. Eric Thomas and Extreme Execution has been a game changer for me. And I started with me, right? So I started with me trying to figure out how can I get better in relation to my relationship with my wife. Right? Why are we not seeing eye to eye? And once I started to see how I communicate with her, which doesn't work, I had to learn how to switch things up. And so I said, okay, this is working with my wife. I can communicate better. What about my staff? What about those teachers who don't necessarily look at the principal as a true colleague? Because in schools, I promise you, there is a strong line between us versus them, and teachers feel like it's them versus their administrators. And I don't call them administrators; I call us leaders.
Yes.
But teachers versus the leaders, and it's a big problem in schools across the country because teachers feel like, hey, I have to evaluate you, or I'm being evaluated by you, and we can have problems if you are feeling. When I bring up the assessment, and we start using those assessment, the tools, the ideas there, it starts to break down those barriers.
Yeah.
And you can start to understand those who are not like you, who don't process like you, who don't behave like you. And you can say, oh, it's not that you don't like me, it's that the way I'm communicating with you doesn't really resonate with you.
Yeah.
So let me communicate differently as a leader.
Come on.
Come on, man. And now, as a leader, once you're knowledgeable about how people are and who are different than you can now customize your conversations with them instead of speaking from how you understand and process things, because it doesn't always work. Right. You can do that with students because they're all in the classroom. The assessment is broken up into 4 major behaviors that we focus on, right? 4 major behaviors. And all those behaviors, I promise you, they show up in the classroom. Right? You have that pilot behavior that's there. Guess what? They are they're looking for the result. They're looking for the win. And sometimes as kids, that pilot behavior looks like bullying behavior.
Yeah, come on.
And they're not bullies. They don't have to be. It can be. They absolutely can be. But now you know how to manage that. Right. So now you start giving them jobs. When I was in the schools, if I noticed a pilot behavior child, I said, okay, they have a job to do. And when I was at recess, my pilots were like my police officers, and they will come to Dr. McGhee. They over there throwing rocks at everybody, and they'll be the main rock thrower. But now that they have a job, they know who all the rock throwers are, and they'll put them on blast, and they don't care. But you got teachers like that. You have parents that come in like that. I know I'm long-winded on this, but I'm so passionate about it. I would have parents come in freaking out. And once I understood that they're coming at me from a systems and procedure perspective, I start talking about the systems and procedure because I'm wired to talk about the emotions.
Yeah.
I know you're upset. Let me tell you, now I'm starting to get upset, and we bump heads. But once I start saying, you know what, you're absolutely right. Our code of conduct does say 10-day suspension, but I have a grace period of 6 to 10 days.
Yeah.
Why don't I go with the 6 days instead of 10? She like, thank you.
Yes.
It changes the game, man, when you're able to master this tool that we have at our disposal. And I've been changing the game ever since, man.
Yeah. I love the fact that you mentioned having a mission and value system.
Come on.
Because when I talk to companies and organizations, one of the first things that I talk about is having a operational process and workflow and system that aligns with your mission.
Mm-hmm.
And the first thing I always do, Doc, is I go around and I say, tell me what your mission statement is. Crickets. Okay, hold on. Let me go around to leadership because I know they know. Crickets. Nobody knows what the mission is.
Mm-hmm.
So we're going day to day,
Yeah.
hour to hour, and we're not aligned with our mission.
Mm-hmm.
Talk about how important putting a system in place, because we have to constantly manage us, and what we're doing to align ourselves with our values and principles.
Yes. It is so important, man. But to my friends in education, I'm gonna tell you that sometimes it's very difficult to follow the mission. Oftentimes, because you're so day to day, everything is so moment to moment, and oftentimes you have to reset every day to show up for those kids that you serve. to show up. You got to reset, because you can't take things personally. So a lot of times, if our North Star is here, we come here and we have to be ingrained in the trenches with our kids and with our families and with our communities, that we don't often get a chance to go back to that North Star. But it's so important. This is why schools be schooling, right? It's like this cycle of, well, what's going to work? What strategy? Nothing, you don't really see a lot of growth that happens in schools because of what you're talking about. When you start to bring together a level of alignment with your missions and what you're trying to do, every time things get off track, all you have to do is go back to the mission. As a leader, I told this to my assistant principals as I'm giving them my deans, I'm giving them the game. I'm like, listen, every decision, and my leadership team, every decision that we make has to align with our mission. If it doesn't align, we can't do it. My superintendent told us this, and I was like, listen, I thought we were in church. She said, if it doesn't align, it's not the time. So every decision, if it doesn't align with that mission, that purpose that we have, then we're not doing it. I'm sorry, community partner, you want to give us $50,000 to do XYZ. If it doesn't align with increasing our graduation rates, if it doesn't align with, us being the #1 innovative school in the county, if it doesn't align with that, I can't do it. And as a leader, people will get upset when you don't take that money. And I'm like, but can't do it because it doesn't align. They want to build a playground. We don't have a playground. So it doesn't make sense for us. I can't take that. But that's a decision you have to make as a leader. But if you don't have a mission, if you don't have a clear North Star, what's going to happen is you're going to take it, and now you're bound to that, and they're expecting you to build this playground at a high school, and it's like, it doesn't make sense.
Yeah.
So the mission is super important, man. You'll be all over the place. You'll start going wide, and then you'll be I don't even want to say a jack of all trades. You'll be so responsible for all these different things, and you're not even, moving in the direction of what your initial goal or your mission was in the first place when you started.
Yeah.
So you're all over the place.
Doc, as we wind down, and I wish we had a whole lot more time, but I want to respect your time and so forth. But as we kind of get into, I know you're speaking a lot. I know you're doing a whole lot of consulting. But before we close out, you have a book that's coming out real soon. What's the name of the book?
Yeah, I hope so, man. I don't want anybody to steal my title, man. But I tell you, it's a book on leadership. And the idea of the book is for us to take this inward journey on leadership and how leadership is more about you than it is about the people that's in your care.
Yeah.
But it directly impacts those that are in your care. So I'm putting together a guide for leaders to take this journey on leadership from the inside. It's an inward journey, man. So that's the premise of the book, and hopefully that should come out in early 2025.
Okay. And for those who are in the educational space, in the professional space and so forth, where can they actually find you as well?
Man, so you can definitely go to my website, www.drjmcgee.com. There you can get an idea, overview of who I am and what I'm about. But I'm also on social media like a mug. I'm on Facebook. I'm on Instagram. I'm on LinkedIn. Those are my 3 primary platforms. You should be able to find me as Dr. Jason McGhee, Dr. J McGhee, in those areas. And man, I do videos. I try to inspire people, get us to focus on a word for the week that kind of allows us to get back to the center of who we are and what we're doing, much like you talked about the mission. So we can do that every week and create. And I've also started a podcast, man. We're about 4 weeks in, and it's a pep talk. Call it a pep talk. It's time for a pep talk. And I really want to empower principals. I want to empower teachers and families with just giving them a pep talk, especially. So we air on Sunday nights. So they're getting ready for their week. You can get a small, quick pep talk. It's about 15 minutes, and just get excited about your week. Bring some focus to your week so that you can serve those babies that's in our care and those principals. You can serve your adults and the babies and the families that's in your care, man. It's important work. So I'm here to to bring that inspiration, that love, and also that vulnerability to the leadership space so that we can all continue to grow and get better in serving our people.
Yeah. Doc, one last question, because everybody has not had the opportunity to cross the burning sands or to to pledge '06,
Amen. Many
but
are called, but few are frozen.
what would you and how would you advise someone who is listening but really want to become a better version of themselves, whether it's the educational space, whether it's from a professional space? Like, what is some last words that you can advise, teach them, along this journey of becoming a better version of themselves?
Perfect. Listen, I would say there are 4 questions you need to engage with in everything that you do. I don't care if you're looking to pledge a fraternity or a sorority, you're looking to become an educator, you want to become an engineer, a doctor. If you are just trying to apply to Applebee's, I don't care. Here are the questions you got to engage with and have answers to. Number 1, who are you? Number 2, why are you here? Number 3, what am I doing? And number 4, where am I going? If you answer all those questions, you've created a blueprint for yourself to do whatever it is you want to do. But you got to grapple with those. And if you can't do those, right? If those 4 questions are so difficult for you, because who am I can be tough. The first, what do I lie to myself about? Start there and have the conversation with yourself. You don't need anybody else in the room. You don't need your mom, your dad, your sister. You don't need them. You spend time with you and ask yourself those questions. And that's going to be the starting point for you and the rest of your life. I promise you.
I love it. Doc, thank you very much for tapping in today. Guys, thank you very much for tapping into another Lunch and Learn on this World Building Friday.
Yes, yes.
Let's have a fantastic day. And we